adopting proposed changes to board policy. The majority of those exhibits, the changes are to comply with changes in state law that occurred during the last legislative session. Exhibit 1, for example, has changes intended to comply with changes to state law regarding instruction on human sexuality and access to the instructional materials by parents and students. Basically, none of these exhibits have any options that the board has to choose, or that the administration had to choose and make a recommendation. Just including or incorporating language to reflect changes in state law. Does anyone have any questions on Exhibit 1?
So basically, the big difference on this for the board is that in being in line with the statute changes, you will approve the human sexuality curriculum and it has to be posted on our website. So basically, the big difference on this for the board is
Okay.
that in
Exhibit 2 reflects changes in state law that requires parents to be allowed to record IEP meetings. Changes in state law that requires. And if you have a situation where a parent chooses to record an IEP conference or meeting, then the school corporation would also record it.
I have a question. Do they need to start the meeting out with asking that question, are you recording?
I'm sorry?
Would they need to start the meeting out with the question, are you recording?
Well, they could to determine whether the parents are doing so. You don't have to be.
I thought they needed advance notice or
Sure.
permission to do that, like 2 days before or something, so they would know already ahead of time,
Right.
correct?
I believe that's correct. You could certainly ask the question to have it on the record, but they should.
I thought they needed advance notice or permission.
Is there some concern that they may try and edit some of the stuff out of there, but even though we have it recorded?
Well, that's the whole premise of this, that we have to be very concerned about, that they would record something which we should record it too, so that there is no manipulation. That we would be able to say, this is our copy of it, right? That's the whole
And
premise.
the policy contemplates that anytime the parent records, it would also be recorded by them.
Which we should record.
And this is in regards to IEPs only.
Correct. That's how I read it.
IEPs is our copy.
Mhm.
The policy contemplates that anytime the parent records. All right, any other questions about Exhibit 2?
That's how I read it.
All right, you have before you Exhibit 3, which is a policy on student assessment. Once again, that has been revised to reflect changes in state law. We have language providing for the opportunity for students to retake the pre-assessment at least 2 times. Language in there about exemptions for English language learner students and language about mathematics intervention. See the changes highlighted.
I think it's imperative for the board to know that, as this is unfolding with all of this, it's really important that you recognize that for a good cause exemption, like it's special ed, there's some other things with EL, English language learners, but if a student doesn't pass iRead even twice, they will have to be retained twice. And so that has also prompted where if parents are now becoming educated about this, that it's prompting them to want special ed testing much more in an advanced mode, and I can't say that I blame them for that. I hope the legislatures take a look at that. I don't think it's healthy to be holding back a child 2 years in a row. But in the same token, their prior legislation was fine. And what do I mean by that? Okay, so if they didn't pass iRead and they are capable of going on to grade 4, you give them grade 3 and grade 4, right? In reading and writing. And so there's other ways around this than to continue to hold kids back like that. I can tell you in our own school corporation and neighboring school corporations, that's a huge discussion with all of us right now about retention. And it's devastating to a lot of parents and kids, and no one is for social promotion. But obviously, some kids, it takes a little bit longer, and they're not special ed. They just need a little longer, right? And exactly. So their system before worked really well. How about like 3rd grade standards being taught and 4th grade if they're not that developmentally behind, which we could tell by the scores and other data points. So I just want the board to know that that is happening more so now where, and here's the other caveat that goes with that. You cannot, like a parent's requesting testing after a child doesn't pass, you have to already have been evaluated and deemed special ed before you get that good cause exemption. So parents are angry about that because they feel like their child should be tested because that would stop the retention process, and it does not. You have to have already been identified. So those are good talking points, and if you need more information, obviously you could call me.
The other talking point on that is every time a child is retained, they have a 25% less chance of graduating than a child
Exactly.
who was not. So retained twice, they have a 50% chance of not graduating high school.
Correct.
Those statistics are staggering.
Right, so no one wants to be in high school when they're 20 years old.
No.
And so it's good intentions, but the wrong process. We have other ways to help kids with that. It's not necessary.
All right, Exhibit 4 has been another revision to existing policy to reflect changes to state law. And it describes the supplemental payments for teachers. It's not subject to collective bargaining, and it describes the process to exclude funds from the education fund floors. Describes the supplemental payments for teachers. Are there any questions about Exhibit 4? Exhibit 5 has been we have a revision to board policy to reflect changes in state law. The legislation excluded the prohibition on transfer for athletic reasons. So the sentence in the board policy that said that has been stricken. Exhibit 6 reflects changes in state law regarding attendance.
Yeah, that's what I wanted to.
Changes are highlighted in the exhibit. We have state definitions here. One of the definitions is for habitual truant. It's interesting definition of a habitual truant for purposes of a license suspension is more than 10 days. And so that hasn't changed. The other major provision is to prohibit suspension or expulsion because of attendance problems.
I think that one added piece on here that was added in this legislative session where you cannot expel a student for being truant. And basically you're trying to do anything you can to prevent a dropout, but a student refuses to come to school. And so, you know, at some point they've missed 67 days or whatever, and you're still trying to talk them into coming back to school. And I agree with the legislators, it doesn't make sense to expel them when you're trying to get them to come back to school. So, believe it or not, I do agree with them on that one. It's just tough. You do everything that you can to make sure that kids come, and sometimes it's just difficult to get them here.
What's the number of days again that they've changed to that the students can miss? Is it still 10?
Right, you go on a truancy plan if you've missed 5 in a 10-week period, because
5 in
that.
a 10-week period, so that's 5 per grading period, well, a little bit more. What's the number of days again? Well,
It's
10
10
weeks,
weeks.
that's a little bit more than a grading period, because we're 8 weeks.
Grading period is 9 weeks.
9 weeks, so just a little bit more. Okay.
Is that like 5 contacts or 5 total?
Those would be 5 absences.
Excused or unexcused, correct?
It would be unexcused.
Okay.
They did give us some options, which we won't even get into with this session. I will just say, Dr. Jenner, our Secretary of Education, did a call out on Chris King because she called me and wanted me to look at something. I think I was in a meeting with, I don't know who I was in a meeting with, but anyways, I sent it to Chris King because we had just met about this, John, Chris and myself, and we ironed out what we thought the legislation meant. And so I told her what I thought it meant, and then she sent me back and said, does this look good to you? And I'm like, I can't review this now, I sent it to Chris. And so Chris was like, yeah, and he gave some really good comments, and I sent them back to Dr. Jenner. So I wanna just give kudos to him because, and John too, because we had ironed that out, what we thought it meant. And she did agree with our interpretation. It's just complicated. They
I
make
know.
everything very complicated. I think what is really important for you to know, our handbooks reflect local policy. Our attendance rates have never been better. All of our schools were 95% or higher, except for the high school. They were 94, and they were down in the 40s and 50s after COVID. So if we don't think that this didn't work, it worked. And it's just important for the public to know you cannot learn if you're not here. And COVID really gave people a false sense of what it means to be online or make up work or not being here, and it's okay. That's not true. And so I do think that you see higher rates of achievement going along with those attendance rates. So good job to everybody. Good job.
Okay, so it's 5 unexcused in a 10-week period.
Hey, John, I do want to make note on that about discussing with Matt Whiteman in the virtual school. There are some changes in here we need to go over with him.
Attendance. Is that attendance?
Yeah.
All right, Exhibit 7. We have 2 board policies that are being revised to reflect changes to state law. You may recall some years back when we modified state law, board policy rather, to make it clear that discrimination on the basis of sex included gender or gender parentheses, and now we're taking it out again. Okay. Now, having said that, we still have decisions by the Seventh Circuit that we're bound by with regard to some of those issues, so this doesn't necessarily mean a big change in how things are done. And to the extent that there's language being deleted as far as bullying based on gender identity, bullying is bullying. So I don't see that really reflecting any real change in how things are actually done. Anyone have any questions about Exhibit 7? I think there is a change as far as the time frame for notification of parents when you have a bullying situation. Exhibit 8 includes a technical correction that I don't think makes a material difference. Exhibit 9, we have an amendment to board policy to reflect changes to state law, some other minor changes that I think we need to be concerned about. The change here is primarily to make it clear that if a student is suspended, expelled, or passes away, the parents have the right to remove their belongings from their locker. Change here is primarily to make it clear that the student Exhibit 10 has to do with food service, and you can see that the language dealing with meal charges has been revised. And this is a product of work that the superintendent did with your director of food services.
This, in transitioning over to Patrick, he's done a really great job with this particular item. I will say, working with Bobby and Tracy Brumley, our treasurer, trying to rein this in, it's unfortunate. We ask people to fill out free and reduced lunch applications. Some people do. We're constantly reminding people of it. And then what happens is, like, we give lunch no matter what. There's no food shaming, right? And people know that. Well, there was a total in your pink colored items that we deleted, where basically once they got to $20, they were trying to use the Bricky Lunchbox Fund for it, and after $20, it wasn't even accumulating anymore. And so it was never showing how much they've racked up in charges. And so we basically eliminated that. So we know that we don't food shame, but if you're in that meal charging section, there's no limit to the number of reimbursable meals, but guess what? We're keeping track of that. And if you don't pay your bill, we're turning it over to collection. And so that's basically how this is coming down to it. Unpaid meal charges shall continue to accrue. And then they're gonna constantly be reminded of their negative balances. And then we will turn it over to a collection agency. You can see that over on your next page. And that's basically it, everybody. And then they're gonna constantly be reminded of their negative
Questions
balances.
about Exhibit 10?
And then we will turn it over
That's it. 59.
How about that?
Look at you, great job.
That was very good. I'm gonna end that one. There we go. And then we have, all right, board, we have an exec session.